I never thought I'd be the type to wreck my own marriage, but here I am. I'm Vicki, 32 from Michigan, and I need to get this off my chest. You know those moments where you say something you can't take back? Yeah, well, I had one of those, and it basically blew up my entire life. But let me start from the beginning, because honestly, I still don't think I'm entirely to blame here. I met Henry at my friend Melissa's wedding 3 years ago. He wasn't even supposed to be there. He was filling in for another groomsman who got sick last minute. That's when I first noticed the contrast between him and his brother, Chase. Henry had this quiet thing going on. He wasn't trying to be the center of attention like most guys. Plus, being a commercial airline pilot definitely made him stand out from all the boring accountants and salesmen I usually met. Chase was the life of the party, though. He kept everyone laughing, knew all the latest TikTok dances, and honestly, he was the one I noticed first. But Henry was the one who actually made a move. He asked for my number while Chase was busy entertaining everyone else. I remember thinking it was kind of sweet how direct he was about it. Our first date was at this little breakfast place near the airport before one of his flights. He ordered this ridiculous amount of food. Pilot thing, apparently. And we talked for hours. He was different from the guys I usually dated. He actually listened when I talked about my dreams of opening my own yoga studio. Most guys just nodded along, but Henry started asking questions about business plans and location scouting. I'll admit the pilot salary didn't hurt either. After struggling to make ends meet teaching yoga at other people's studios, the idea of having that kind of security was pretty appealing. Plus, him being away for flights meant I'd have plenty of time for myself. It seemed perfect. The wedding happened fast. Like, maybe too fast, looking back. But when you hit your 30s, you kind of feel this pressure, you know? My mom kept sending me articles about fertility declining after 35, and my younger sister had just had her second kid. Henry seemed like the perfect package. Stable job, good family, and he actually supported my yoga business dreams. Chase was Henry's best man, and that's when things got complicated. During the wedding planning, we spent a lot of time together, the three of us. I mean, Chase would come over with takeout when Henry was on long-haul flights, claiming he was checking on his future sister-in-law. He'd make these little jokes about how I was too fun for his serious brother, and I'd laugh them off. But something about them stuck with me. The ceremony was beautiful, but what I remember most is Chase's best man's speech. He told this story about how Henry had always been the responsible one, the one who made their parents proud, while he was the screw-up who bartended and couch surfed. But the way he told it, it was like he was proud of being the fun one, the free spirit. I caught myself wondering what life would be like with someone like that, instead of my practical pilot. After the honeymoon, real life started setting in. Henry's schedule was brutal. 4 days away, 3 days home, rinse and repeat. I threw myself into opening my yoga studio, but the reality of running a business was harder than I expected. Henry tried to help with the books, but his suggestions felt like criticism. Maybe start smaller, he'd say, build up gradually. But I had this vision, you know? I wanted it to be perfect from day one. That's when Chase started showing up more. He dropped by the studio with coffee claiming he was in the neighborhood. He followed me on Instagram, always the first to like my posts and leave encouraging comments. When I vented about Henry's long absences, Chase would say things like, "That's Henry for you. Always in the clouds, never on the ground where the real stuff happens." Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The way I'd get excited when Chase's name popped up on my phone, how I'd find myself dressing up a little more on days I knew he might stop by the studio, the way I'd compare them in my head. Henry's careful planning versus Chase's spontaneity, Henry's silence versus Chase's constant communication. But I justified it all. Henry was away so much and Chase was just being friendly, plus they were brothers. It wasn't like anything would ever happen, right? I wasn't doing anything wrong by having a close relationship with my brother-in-law. At least that's what I told myself. The truth is, I was building this whole fantasy in my head about what life could have been like with Chase instead of Henry. Every time Henry came home tired from a flight and just wanted to sleep, every time he questioned a business expense at the studio, Every time he missed a social event because of work, I'd think about how Chase would have handled it differently. I started following Chase's social media more closely, liking his posts about the bar where he worked, watching his stories about the crazy nights and fun customers. Meanwhile, Henry barely used social media, said he had enough screens in the cockpit. It was just another thing that made them different. My friends noticed the change in me. Melissa, the one whose wedding started this whole thing, actually pulled me aside at her baby shower. "You seem different around Chase," she said. "Be careful, Vicki." But I brushed her off. I was married to Henry. I was committed to Henry. Chase was just Chase. A friend. A family, even. But every time Henry left for another flight, every time Chase sent another funny meme or stopped by with my favorite cold brew, the line between appropriate and inappropriate got a little blurrier. I started looking forward to family gatherings, not because I'd see my husband, but because I knew Chase would be there with his stories and his jokes and his way of making me feel like the most interesting person in the room. I didn't realize I was setting myself up for disaster. I didn't see how my harmless flirtation and innocent friendship was slowly poisoning my marriage. I was too busy convincing myself that I deserved both Henry's stability and Chase's excitement, too busy blaming Henry's absences for my growing closeness to his brother, too busy playing with fire to notice I was about to get burned. Things really started falling apart 6 months into the marriage. Henry's airline added more international routes, which meant longer stretches away from home. The money was better, sure, but I was spending most evenings alone in our new house, scrolling through social media and watching Chase's stories from the bar. He always seemed to be having so much fun while I was stuck at home managing a struggling yoga studio. I started making excuses to see Chase more often. I'd sign up for evening classes at his gym, conveniently located near his bar, just trying to expand my yoga network. I told Henry when he noticed the charges. Chase would stick around after his workouts and we'd grab dinner, talking about everything and nothing. He understood my frustrations with the studio in a way Henry didn't. While Henry would suggest practical solutions like reducing class sizes or raising prices, Chase would tell me to follow my heart, and that money wasn't everything. The studio was bleeding money, if I'm being honest. I'd maxed out 2 credit cards buying high-end equipment and luxury decor, convinced that Instagram-worthy aesthetics would bring in clients. Henry started asking questions about the business finances, but I got defensive. "You're never here anyway," I'd snap. "What do you care how I run things?" That's when the secret meetings with Chase started. I told myself it was for business advice. He ran a bar, after all. But we both knew that was just an excuse. We'd meet at this quiet coffee shop across town, far from his usual haunts. He'd listen to me complain about Henry's absence, about his obsession with saving money, about how he didn't understand my vision for the studio. "Henry's always been like that," Chase would say, leaning in close. "All work and no play. Remember that time he missed your studio's opening party because of a last-minute flight?" Of course, I remembered. Chase had been there instead, helping me welcome my first clients, making everyone laugh with his silly attempts at yoga poses. Our text conversations got longer and more frequent. I started checking my phone constantly, hiding the screen whenever Henry was home. Chase would send me songs that reminded him of me, funny memes about yoga, pictures of sunsets from the bar's rooftop with captions like, "Wish you were here to see this." I saved them all. Henry noticed the change in me. I think he started trying harder when he was home, cooking dinner, suggesting date nights, but I was already pulling away. Everything he did seemed wrong somehow. His practical gifts felt thoughtless compared to the little surprises Chase would leave at the studio. My favorite energy drinks, cute workout tanks he'd seen at the mall. The money issues got worse. I kept hiding purchases from Henry, justifying them as business expenses. Chase encouraged this, telling me I deserved nice things, that Henry was too controlling with money. When Henry found out I'd spent our vacation fund on a meditation room renovation, he was furious. You're acting like a teenager," he said. "This isn't sustainable." I stormed out and drove straight to Chase's bar. That night, Chase and I stayed talking until closing time. He mixed me fancy cocktails and listened to me rant about Henry's controlling behavior. "You're too good for this," he said, touching my hand across the bar. "You deserve someone who gets you." The way he looked at me, I felt something shift between us that night. The next day, Henry tried to have a serious conversation about our finances. He'd found more credit card statements I'd hidden. Instead of owning up to my mistakes, I turned it around on him. "Maybe if you were home more, I wouldn't need to spend money to feel better," I said. Chase understands that people need more than just practicality to be happy. That was the first time I saw real hurt in Henry's eyes. He got quiet, quieter than usual, and left for a 3-day flight without saying goodbye. I told myself he was overreacting. Chase agreed with me when I called him crying about it. He came over that night with takeout and wine, and we sat on the couch watching bad reality TV until 2 a.m. Looking back, I can see how it all snowballed. Every time Henry questioned my decisions, I'd run to Chase. Every time Henry was away, Chase was there. I started comparing them constantly. How Chase would compliment my new yoga outfits while Henry would ask about the price tags. How Chase would spontaneously bring me lunch while Henry stuck to our agreed budget for dining out. The breaking point started at a family dinner at Henry's parents' house. I'd had a rough week at the studio. 3 clients had canceled their memberships, complaining about the high prices. Henry had suggested lowering the rates again, and I was still angry about it, so when his mom brought out the wine, I didn't hold back. Chase was sitting across from me, telling everyone about this wild bachelor party at his bar. Henry was quiet, picking at his food, probably tired from his flight. The wine made me bold. I started laughing too loud at Chase's jokes, leaning forward when he talked, touching his arm when he passed the salt. Remember when you came to my studio opening?" I said, louder than necessary. Chase actually showed up, unlike someone. I saw Henry's jaw tighten, but I kept going. "He even tried doing yoga! You should have seen him in Downward Dog." Chase shifted uncomfortably, but I was on a roll. The wine was hitting hard and all my pent-up frustrations were spilling out. Chase never misses my classes when he's free, unlike my own husband, who's always too busy flying around the world. Henry's mom tried changing the subject, asking about my parents' upcoming visit, but I couldn't stop myself. "You know what's funny? Chase knows more about my business than Henry does. He actually listens when I talk about it, instead of just throwing money problems in my face." The table got quiet. Henry put down his fork, his face unreadable. His dad cleared his throat and started talking about the weather, but I wasn't done. Something in me wanted to hurt Henry, to make him feel as neglected as I did. "Must run in the family," I said, swirling my wine. "Being emotionally unavailable. Well, except for Chase. Guess one brother had to get all the personality." Chase stood up abruptly. "I should go. Early shift tomorrow." He couldn't even look at me. Henry's mom tried to convince him to stay for dessert, but he made his excuses and left. The silence after he went was deafening. Henry didn't say a word on the drive home. I filled the silence with bitter comments about his family being too sensitive, how they never really accepted me. He just kept his eyes on the road, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When we got home, I expected a fight. I wanted one. Instead, Henry just looked at me with this mixture of disappointment and resignation that made my stomach turn. "We need to talk about what's going on with you and Chase," he said quietly. I went on the defensive immediately. "There's nothing going on. We're friends. He's my brother-in-law. Am I not allowed to have a relationship with your family?" "A relationship, yes. But what you're doing, this isn't that." "What exactly am I doing, Henry? Being friendly? Having actual conversations? Showing emotions like a normal person instead of walking around like some robot?" He just shook his head. "You know exactly what you're doing, Vicki, and so does everyone else." That made me furious. "Oh, so now everyone's talking about me? Your perfect family looking down on me again? At least Chase treats me like a person instead of someone problem that needs to be fixed." Henry went quiet again, that infuriating pilot calm that made me want to scream. "I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight," he said finally. "I think we both need some space to think." "Running away again," I called after him as he packed an overnight bag. "That's what you're good at, right? Leaving me alone while you fly off to wherever." He paused at the door. "No, Vicki. I'm not the one running away from our marriage. You are. Then he left, and I was alone with the echoes of everything I'd said at dinner. Our wedding anniversary was the next week. Henry came home for it, which surprised me. He made reservations at this nice steakhouse downtown, not our usual spot, but I figured he was trying to make up for the tension after the family dinner. I spent hours getting ready, partly hoping he'd notice, partly out of habit from all those evenings getting dressed up to accidentally run into Chase at his bar. The restaurant was beautiful, all dark wood and soft lighting. Henry ordered an expensive bottle of wine and actually tried making conversation. He asked about the studio, and I found myself wishing he'd just lecture me about the finances instead. This attempt at normalcy felt worse somehow. Then he gave me his gift, a laptop. A practical, professional-looking laptop for the studio's bookkeeping, he said. It has all the software you need to manage the business properly. I just stared at it. Earlier that week, I'd seen Chase's Instagram story showing the designer watch he'd bought his girlfriend for their 6-month anniversary. The contrast hit me hard. Here was my husband, on our wedding anniversary, giving me accounting software. The wine wasn't helping my mood. I'd been scrolling through social media all week, seeing Chase's posts about missing his favorite yoga instructor while Henry was away. The laptop sat between us like an accusation. You don't get it, do you? I said, pushing the laptop away. This is exactly why we're having problems. You think everything can be fixed with spreadsheets and budgets. Vicki, no, let me finish. You know what Chase got his girlfriend? A watch. A beautiful, thoughtful watch, not some practical office supply. Henry's face went completely still. Why are you so concerned about what Chase gives his girlfriend? That's not the point. The point is you don't understand me at all. Chase would never what, Vicki? The wine, the frustration, the weeks of building resentment, it all came pouring out. Chase would never treat me like some business problem to solve. He actually sees me as a person, not just some line item in his budget spreadsheet. I laughed bitterly. You know what? Sometimes I think I should have married him instead. The silence that followed was absolute. Henry just looked at me for a long moment, then stood up slowly, deliberately. Without a word, he walked out of the restaurant, just left me there. I sat there in shock for a few minutes, then did what I always did when things went wrong. I called Chase. But this time was different. Instead of his usual sympathetic tone, he sounded distant. You went too far, Vicki, he said. Way too far. But no, you need to fix this or don't, but I can't be your backup plan anymore. He hung up. I stared at my phone, then started posting on social media vague quotes about settling and true happiness. I was sure Henry would see them and realize he was overreacting. He'd come home, apologize for walking out, and we could pretend none of this had happened. But Henry didn't come home that night, or the next, or the next. 3 days of silence. I called his parents. They said he was taking some time to think. I tried Chase again, but my calls went straight to voicemail. His Instagram showed him at work, but he blocked my comments. I started feeling nervous. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Henry was supposed to chase after me, to fight for me. Chase was supposed to be there to validate my feelings. Instead, I was alone in our big house with nothing but a laptop full of accounting software for company. When Henry finally came back, he wasn't alone. He had a manila envelope tucked under his arm and a look I'd never seen before. Not angry, not hurt, just done. He set the envelope on our kitchen counter while I stood there in my yoga pants, trying to act like I hadn't been obsessively checking both brothers' social media for 3 days straight. I think you should sit down, he said, using his pilot voice, the one he probably used during turbulence to keep passengers calm. I sat. He opened the envelope and started laying out papers. Screenshots of text messages, Instagram DMs, photos of Chase and me at that coffee shop across town, security camera stills from his bar showing us staying late after closing, bank statements showing all the times I'd eaten at his bar when Henry was flying. Everything had dates, times, locations. Chase gave you these? My voice sounded small even to me. He's my brother, Vicki. Did you really think he wouldn't tell me what was going on? He's been keeping me updated for months. The reality hit me like a slap. All those times Chase had listened to me complain about Henry, all those secret coffee meetings, all those late-night texts, Henry had known. Chase had been reporting back to him the whole time. That's invasion of privacy. I tried to sound outraged, but it came out weak. You had your brother spy on me. No, Vicky, I had my brother protect me from you. He slid another paper across the counter. Divorce papers, already filled out, just waiting for my signature. But nothing even happened with Chase. We never, didn't it? Henry's voice was tired. Maybe not physically, but you chose him every time you ran to him instead of talking to me, every time you compared us, every time you undermined our marriage to get his attention. And then that comment at dinner. I was drunk. It was just a joke. No, it wasn't, and we both know it. My phone buzzed. Instinctively, I reached for it, hoping it was Chase. Instead, it was a notification that Chase had blocked me on Instagram. When I looked up, Henry was watching me with this sad, knowing look. He's engaged, by the way, Henry said quietly. Has been for 2 months. That designer watch you were so impressed by? It was an engagement gift. He just didn't post about it because he knew you'd make a scene. The room started spinning. Chase was engaged to that girlfriend he barely posted about? All those times he'd let me flirt with him, all those deep conversations about feelings and understanding. You know what the worst part is? Henry continued. He tried to warn me before the wedding, said you seemed more interested in him than me, but I defended you, told him you were just friendly, that you'd never. He trailed off, staring at the divorce papers between us. I noticed his hands were shaking slightly, the first time I'd ever seen him lose that pilot's composure. The studio's failing, isn't it? He asked suddenly. That's why you've been taking money from our savings. Chase told me about the credit cards, too. I felt the walls closing in. Everyone knew. They'd all been talking about me, comparing notes while I thought I was the one in control of the situation. That was 6 months ago. Now I'm living in my friend Melissa's spare room because I can't afford my own place. The studio closed last month. Turns out Henry was right about those spreadsheets being important. The bank seized most of the equipment to cover the loans I'd taken out. I tried blaming Henry for not supporting my dream, but even Melissa stopped buying that excuse. Henry got the house in the divorce. His lawyer had a field day with those bank statements showing how I'd been draining our savings. My Instagram following dropped by half when people realized I wasn't a studio owner anymore. Most of my yoga entrepreneur friends disappeared when I couldn't host their workshops or promote their products. The worst part? Henry's dating someone new. One of my former students, actually, Samantha, the one who runs that successful physical therapy practice. She's everything I pretended to be. Financially responsible, genuinely supportive, honest. I saw them at the grocery store last week. He was laughing, really laughing. Not that polite chuckle he used to give my jokes about Chase. Oh, yeah, Chase. He's married now. The engagement photos were gorgeous, his wife looking perfect in her designer watch. They moved to Chicago for her job, but not before Chase wrote me a letter. He said he'd only ever seen me as a sister-in-law, that he'd played along with my flirting because he was gathering evidence for Henry, that all those deep conversations we had were just him trying to protect his brother, that he'd never been interested in me that way. He was just being nice because of Henry. My friends have mostly taken Henry's side. They say I was obviously wrong to flirt with Chase, that joking about marrying him instead was cruel. Even Melissa, who's letting me stay with her, keeps making these little comments about learning from our mistakes and taking responsibility. But here's the thing. I still think Henry shares some blame here. If he'd been more present, more understanding about the studio, more like Chase, well, maybe things would have been different. Maybe if he hadn't been so focused on budgets and spreadsheets, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere for validation. I saw on Facebook that Henry's parents are hosting Thanksgiving this year. Samantha posted about helping with the cooking. Apparently, she's good at that too. My invitation got lost in the mail, I guess. Chase and his wife will be there, showing off their perfect life and that stupid watch. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd actually married Chase instead of Henry. But then I remember the look on his face when he gave those screenshots to Henry, how easily he turned on me, how he'd been playing me the whole time. At least Henry was always honest about who he was. The irony, That laptop Henry gave me for our anniversary would have been really useful for job hunting right now, but I left it behind when I moved out, too proud to admit he was right about needing better business management. Melissa says I should see a therapist, work on myself before dating again. She doesn't understand that I'm not the problem here. I just made the mistake of marrying the wrong brother, even if that brother never actually wanted me in the first place. The other day, I drove past our old house. Henry's car was in the driveway next to Samantha's. Through the window, I could see them in the kitchen, cooking together. He was showing her something on that laptop, probably teaching her how to use those accounting programs he tried to get me to learn. They looked happy, comfortable, like they belonged there. I sat in my car and cried for an hour. Not because I miss Henry. I don't. Not really. But because somehow I went from being a successful yoga studio owner with a pilot husband and a beautiful house to sleeping on my friend's pull-out couch and teaching basic yoga classes at the YMCA. And the worst part? Deep down, in the quiet moments when I'm really honest with myself, I know exactly whose fault it is. I just can't bring myself to admit it out loud. If this confession kept you hooked, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We share powerful true stories every day that explore the complex realities of life.